The small village of Okwe was shrouded in mystery. The elders often spoke of the sacred cemetery located at the edge of the forest, where the giant, centuries-old baobab stood like a silent guardian. It was said that lost souls wandered there, and that sometimes the serpent god, known as the god of death, would emerge from his slumber to punish the living who dared to disturb the rest of the dead. Elias, a young man in his 20s, had grown up listening to these stories, but he didn't believe them. Curious and dreamy, he preferred to spend his days drawing sketches of the baobab or exploring the surrounding area of the village. Yet something strange seemed to be weighing on the village these last few days. Dogs barked for no reason, the nights were getting colder, and villagers reported hearing hissing sounds like those of a giant snake. One evening, returning from the market, Elias heard a group of women whispering by a fire. The daughter of Twilight. Amara. She is the key, but she is in danger. Intrigued, he wondered who this Amara could be, and why everyone seemed to fear her as much as they admired her. The sun was setting on the horizon, bathing the village in a golden light. Elias was walking near the sacred baobab tree, his favorite refuge when he needed solitude. But that evening, a silhouette loomed beneath the majestic tree. A young woman sat on a prominent root, her long black hair swaying in the breeze. Elias stopped, fascinated. The twilight light seemed to dance around her, as if nature itself recognized her. The young woman looked up and met his gaze. Her pupils were a deep brown, but a golden glow seemed to shine within them, strange and captivating. "You're Elias, aren't you?" she asked in a soft but confident voice. Surprised that she knew his name, Elias nodded slowly. "I'm Amara. I've seen you draw here several times. This place is special to you, isn't it?" Elias felt his heart race. He couldn't tear his gaze away from this mysterious stranger. "Yes, this is my refuge, and you?" Amara looked away slightly toward the nearby cemetery. "It's my refuge too, but I feel something watching us." A cold shiver ran through Elias as the air suddenly grew heavier. The light breeze had vanished, giving way to a heavy silence. The sun had completely disappeared behind the hills, and a thick mist was slowly rising from the ground, enveloping the tombstones of the sacred cemetery a few steps from the baobab tree. Amara stood up, her eyes fixed on the entrance to the cemetery. Elias followed her gaze. Over there in the gloom, an indistinct figure seemed to move between the graves. "Do you see that?" Elias murmured. Amara nodded without looking away. "Strange things have been happening for days. Voices, whispers, and always this feeling of being watched." The hiss of a snake suddenly echoed in the air, long and ominous. Elias felt his blood run cold. There had been no snakes in the village for generations, for the god of death was supposed to rule them all. "We should leave," Amara said, her voice trembling but determined. But they had barely taken a step back when a long, sinuous shadow appeared from beneath the mist, stretching like a gigantic serpent. Elias's eyes caught a red glint in the night. "Elias, he's here?" Amara murmured. The god of death had found them. The nights grew heavier and heavier, and Amara's dreams took on a strange turn. One night she fell asleep at the foot of the baobab tree, exhausted by recent events. In her sleep, an ancient, almost indescribable song rose into the air. A deep, haunting melody like a call from the beyond. She suddenly found herself in a clearing, surrounded by dancing flames. Around a large sacred fire, masked figures dressed in animal skins stood in a circle. Their voices rose in harmony, singing words forgotten for centuries. Elias stood in the center of the circle, his gaze fixed on Amara's, but another strange presence emanated from him. A gigantic serpent with black and silver scales coiled around her body, invisible to the others, but tangible in the mist that enveloped the scene. The ancestral chants intensified, and a word echoed in Amara's mind. Defense. The vision abruptly faded, leaving her panting and confused. She awoke with a start, her eyes wide. Elias, sitting beside her, was looking at her with palpable concern. "You saw what I see, didn't you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You said." The next day, the wind blew hard, and a thick mist enveloped the forest. Elias and Amara walked silently, each absorbed in their own thoughts. The events of the previous night tormented them, and the atmosphere seemed heavier than usual, as if nature itself were waiting for something. As they moved deeper into the woods, an icy chill ran over their skin. Elias stopped in his tracks, his eyes searching the mist that twisted around them. Something was wrong. "Amara, can you feel that?" She nodded wordlessly, her eyes wide open. The sounds of the forest had ceased and a heavy silence surrounded them. Then, in the mist, two red flashes shone, like eyes lit by an inner fire. Her heart pounding, Amara took a step back, her trembling hands searching for the strength to flee. But before she could react, a massive figure slowly emerged through the mist. A gigantic, serpentine creature emerged from the darkness. Its scales shimmered with an evil glow, and the presence of the serpent god seemed almost tangible. Red eyes stared at Elias and Amara, and a deep, hypnotic voice echoed in their minds. "You can't run away. It's already too late." Amara and Elias rushed out of the forest panting, their hearts pounding. Silence enveloped them again, but fear persisted, clinging to their minds like an insidious shadow. They knew what they had seen was no mere mirage. The serpent god, the mythical creature said to have lain dormant for centuries, had truly come to life. "We must do something," Elias said, his voice cracking with panic. Amara, her eyes shining with determination, turned to him. She remembered an old legend told by the elders of her village. An offering, a talisman of ancient power, could appease the serpent god, but it had to be found before it was too late. "There is an artifact, a jewel hidden in the sacred cemetery," she explained in a trembling but firm voice. "It belongs to my family's ancestors, a talisman forged by them to control the serpent spirits." Elias looked at her, hopeful. If this artifact could truly repel the serpent god, it might be their only chance. But to do that, they had to face fear, the shadows of the cemetery, and whatever lurked there. "Let's go," he said. "We have no time to waste." That night, Amara fell asleep under an overcast sky, thoughts swirling through her mind. A dream awaited her, as real as a vision. She found herself in a dark room by the flickering light of a candle. Before her stood a large mirror framed in blackened wood, adorned with strange symbols that ancestors once used to communicate with spirits. She approached it, drawn by an invisible force. Looking in the mirror, her reflection didn't quite resemble her. She saw her face at first, but as her eyes focused on the image, increasingly blurred images began to overlap. A giant snake, bones, outstretched hands. Then a face. Elias's, but distorted, as if he were drowning in a sea of darkness. A voice rang out in her mind, gentle but heavy with menace. "The end is near, Amara. The promise must be kept." Amara's reflection began to change, decomposing as if death itself were claiming her. She tried to turn away, but her legs were frozen. The vision intensified, and a heart-rending scream escaped her lips. Suddenly she woke with a start, her heart pounding, fear deeply embedded within her. The next morning, the village seemed frozen under a gray sky. Amara couldn't shake the terror from her dream. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could help her understand what she was experiencing. The village's former elder, a mysterious man known as Papa Ibrahime. She went to his modest home, a shack surrounded by brambles and silence. Papa Ibrahime sat in front of a crackling fire, his eyes sparkling with wisdom and mystery. As soon as Amara entered, he raised his head and smiled sadly at her. "You saw the mirror of souls," he said, as if he already knew. Amara sat opposite him, her hands trembling. She told him about her dream, the images that had haunted her, and that strange voice. Papa Ibrahim listened silently, then took a deep breath. What you saw is your family's legacy, a curse that goes back generations. Your ancestors were bound to dark forces, to a sacred serpent, the god of death. Each generation must make a sacrifice so that it leaves the living in peace. You, Amara, are the key to all this. The wise man's words hit Amara like a thunderclap. The truth, cruel as it was finally revealed. Night was falling quickly on the village, and Amara, accompanied by Elias, headed towards the sacred cemetery. The wind blew with unusual intensity, stirring up dead leaves and murmuring indistinct words. With a heavy heart, Amara thought back to Papa Ibrahim's words. Was she truly destined to make a sacrifice to appease the god of death? As they approached the first graves, an icy cold enveloped them. Elias tightened his grip on Amara's hand. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice trembling. Amara nodded. Voices rose in the air, faint whispers seeming to come from beneath the earth. They repeated his name in a pleading, desperate tone. Each step seemed to bring them closer to the source of these sinister whispers. Suddenly, a flash of light pierced the mist. A ghostly figure appeared above an ancient tomb. It was a woman dressed in white, her eyes filled with tears. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Yet, Amara understood her message. Flee, before it's too late. Before they could move, the earth shook beneath their feet. A hiss, powerful and menacing, echoed through the night. The serpent god was near, and he was coming to claim his due. Sitting in the center of Papa Ibrahim's hut, Amara held in her hands an old parchment, yellowed by time. The symbols engraved on it were ancient, but Papa Ibrahim translated each word to her with palpable gravity. "Your ancestors," he murmured, "made a pact with the serpent god to save the life of a dying child. She was your great-grandmother." Amara listened, petrified. The god of death granted life in exchange for an oath. Each generation a sacrifice had to be made to appease him. If this oath was not kept, his wrath would fall upon the descendants. The parchment spoke of a chosen one, chosen each generation, whose sacrifice was supposed to preserve the rest of the family. That year, Amara's name had been inscribed, but her parents had always kept it a secret in an attempt to protect her. "You are the one he wants, Amara," Papa Ibrahim concluded somberly. Amara felt the ground give way beneath her. She finally understood why the serpent god was chasing her. Time was running out, and if she didn't find a way to break this pact, death would come for her. The mist thickened as night fell over the village. Amara and Elias went to the ancient shrine, an abandoned place deep in the forest where ancestors once practiced sacred rituals. The stone wall still bore time-erased carvings of intertwined serpents and mystical symbols. In the center of the shrine, a stone slab was engraved with words in a forgotten language. Elias placed his hand on it, and the letters lit up with a reddish glow. An ethereal voice echoed through the air, both gentle and menacing. "To appease the god of death, a sacrifice must be made. Only the blood of the chosen one can extinguish his wrath." Amara stepped back, her heart pounding. The scroll had mentioned nothing else. Her blood was the key, but Elias refused to accept it. "No, there must be another solution. We can find another way, another sacrifice." The voice continued, louder this time. "The time for choices is over. Every moment that passes strengthens the curse." Amara felt a wave of despair wash over her. The serpent god was demanding his due, and they were running out of time. The moon, full and bright, lit up the cemetery where Amara and Elias stood, surrounded by thick mist. The serpent god emerged from the shadows, gigantic, his black scales gleaming in the moonlight. His red eyes burned with cold fury, staring at Amara with terrifying intensity. "Amara," he said in a deep, resonant voice, "your time has come. Offer your blood, and the curse will be extinguished forever. Resist, and death will strike all those you love." Amara felt the weight of fate pressing heavily on her shoulders. Fear mingled with pain in her heart. She turned a desperate look to Elias, who gripped her hand tightly. "I won't let you do this," he said firmly. "There must be another way." The serpent god hissed impatiently, the earth trembling beneath his massive coils. Amara knew the creature wouldn't wait forever. Yet, an idea suddenly sprang into her mind. "Shall I make a new pact?" she asked. The serpent stopped, intrigued. "A pact stronger than the old ones. One life for another." The serpent god reflected, his eyes glowing with a menacing gleam. Perhaps Amara had just awakened something far more dangerous. The wind howled in the night as Elias, his heart pounding, entered a dark clearing beyond the cemetery. The moon, veiled by black clouds, offered only a faint light. There, in the center of the clearing, stood a stone altar, worn by time, and a spectral figure materialized before it. The Keeper of Souls was a towering figure, half man, half shadow, with eyes that glowed like embers. His voice echoed from another world. "You seek to defy fate," he murmured. "Saving a soul condemned by the god of death is not an act without consequences." Elias stood tall, despite the fear that gnawed his insides. "Tell me what I must do," he implored. "I would give anything for her." The guardian was silent for a moment, then pointed to the altar. "An ancient ritual exists. It demands a voluntary sacrifice. Your own destiny, your free will, offered to the god of death. If you accept, his hold on Amara will end. But once you commit, you can never turn back." Elias, his hands shaking but his gaze determined, nodded. He was ready for anything, even to become a shadow of his former self. In the heart of the clearing, the Guardian of Souls raised his hands, and a circle of red light appeared around Elias. A gigantic shadow emerged from the darkness. The serpent god, imposing and menacing, his red eyes glowing mercilessly. "You have come to make a pact, human," the serpent god hissed, his deep voice echoing in the air. "What do you offer in exchange for Amara's life?" Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Take my destiny, my free will. Take my life if necessary, but let her live." The serpent god narrowed his glittering eyes. "Your destiny for her life. It's a bold bargain, human. But nothing is ever that simple. If you offer me your free will, you will become my eternal servant, a spirit bound to my will. Your soul will never rest." Elias hesitated for a moment. The price was immense, but the love he felt for Amara surpassed all. "I accept," he declared firmly. The serpent god hissed in satisfaction. "Then prepare yourself, for the ritual begins now. And never forget, once the pact is sealed, nothing and no one can change your fate." The ground trembled beneath their feet, and darkness closed in to envelop Elias. The sky darkened completely, lightning ripping through the night as the ritual reached its climax. Elias stood in the center of the circle, arms outstretched, ready to offer his soul. The serpent god loomed above him, ready to seal the pact. "The time has come," the creature declared, its glowing eyes staring at Elias. "With this sacrifice, Amara will be free, and you will forever be my servant." As the serpent god lowered its head to finalize the pact, a brilliant light suddenly burst from Amara's heart. The girl, running through the mist, leaped into the circle, her hands outstretched toward Elias. "No," she cried. "I refuse to lose you to save myself." An invisible force pushed the serpent god back, and he recoiled with a furious hiss. The Guardian of Souls reappeared, his eyes shining with a new brightness. "You have both defied the will of fate. There is another way, but it requires breaking the ancient oath." Amara turned to Elias, her eyes filled with love and courage. Together, they extended their hands to the Guardian. "We are ready," they said in unison. The ground trembled, and the circle of light transformed into a portal, leading to an even greater test. The earth trembled beneath Amara and Elias's feet. As the circle of light around them dissipated, a thick mist filled the cemetery. Whispers, soft and mournful, rose from the graves, like forgotten voices calling to the living. An icy wind blew, carrying with it shifting shadows that took shape. Creatures, both human and monstrous, emerged from the darkness. Specters with distorted faces, twisted figures that seemed made of shadow and pain. Their bony hands reached out towards Elias and Amara, their empty eyes staring at the two young souls with silent rage. Elias brandished a torch trying to push the entities back, but they didn't seem afraid of the light. On the contrary, they were getting closer and closer, their icy presence overwhelming them. "What is it?" Amara cried, breathless. "Ancient spirits," Elias whispered, his voice trembling. "They were imprisoned here, condemned by the pact of the ancestors." The creatures drew closer, forming a circle around them. Suddenly, a larger figure appeared in the center of the cemetery, a spectral being who seemed to be leading the others. A familiar face, that of an ancestor of Amara's, his gaze filled with secrets and despair. "You should never have broken that pact." The wind suddenly calmed, but the air remained heavy and oppressive. The specter of Amara's ancestor stood before them, his piercing eyes seeming to peer into their souls. A thick shadow enveloped him, but his features were surprisingly clear, as if he had come from the past to deliver a message. "You have awakened the spirits," he said in a deep voice tinged with pain. "This cemetery holds much more than the dead. It hides the secrets of your lineage." Amara suddenly felt overwhelmed by an invisible force, as if every word the specter spoke penetrated her mind. Elias, his gaze hardened with fear and determination, stepped forward. "What do you mean?" he cried. "What have we unleashed?" The ancestor slowly raised his hand, and a vivid vision unfolded before them. They saw ancient images, bloody rituals, pacts sealed in pain and death, and familiar figures. Amara's ancestors, forcibly bound to the serpent god. The bonds between their blood and the serpent were not a curse but a will of a far older power, a secret contract to preserve the balance between worlds. "Your bond, Amara, is deeper than you imagined," the ancestor continued. "You are the chosen one, but not by choice, by destiny." The visions faded, but the air remained thick with revelation. Elias and Amara looked at each other, their hearts heavy. The ancestors' words echoed in their minds like a sinister echo. They weren't simply the victims of an ancient pact. They were its heirs, bearers of a burden older than themselves. "This can't be true," Amara breathed, her hands trembling. "How are we bound to the serpent god in this way?" The ancestor, his eyes filled with sadness, stared at Amara with a fearsome intensity. "You are the last witnesses to a promise your ancestors made. Fate is not broken without consequences. The serpent demands what is its due, and your sacrifice is inevitable." The ground began to tremble again. Invisible chains seemed to tighten around them, and the spectral creatures surrounding them drew closer, their gazes filled with icy hatred. The serpent god in the shadows watched the scene with infinite patience. Elias turned to Amara, his gaze dark and determined. "We have to stop this," he said. "There must be a way to regain our freedom." But then Amara's ghost dissipated, and the earth opened beneath their feet. A red, almost unearthly rope stretched before them, guiding their path to a destiny they could no longer ignore. Night had fallen, heavy and stifling, while the full moon slowly rose in the sky, bathing the world in an unearthly glow. Elias and Amara stood side by side, their eyes fixed on the cemetery where it all began. The wind blew gently, carrying with it a scent of damp earth and mystery. Amara, her hands trembling, turned to Elias. Her eyes, filled with pain and uncertainty, searched his for a glimmer of hope. "You don't have to do this, Elias." "There must be another way," she said, her voice weak, almost broken. Elias looked at her, his heart wrenching. The thought of losing her hurt, but he knew he had no other choice. The serpent god was waiting. "It's the only way to save you," he whispered. "I can't let you go, Amara. If I have to die for you, then that's what I will do." Amara clenched her fists, her gaze determined but filled with tears. "No, Elias, don't do this. We've been through too much together." The circle of red light expanded around them, and the silhouette of the serpent god loomed in the shadows. The moment was approaching, the final decision. The moon, full and bright, cast a spectral glow over the cemetery as the earth trembled beneath the serpent god's footsteps. His imposing figure rose before Elias and Amara, his red eyes shining with malice. The air seemed to vibrate with a dark energy, a palpable force that oppressed the hearts of those who dared oppose him. "You have chosen, human," the serpent god hissed, his voice like an echo of death. "The decision is made." Elias stood firm, though an icy chill ran down his spine. He knew this moment was inevitable, but a part of him still hoped for a solution. Amara, her eyes filled with tears, stood beside him, but a sense of resignation was evident in her gaze. "I will not offer you my soul," Elias said firmly, defying the creature. "There is always another way." The serpent hissed, a glint of rage in its eyes. It raised one of its gigantic claws, and black shadows formed around it, trying to seize Elias and Amara. "You dare challenge me? Then be prepared to face the fury of death." The battle between light and shadow began, an unearthly dance where every movement was a struggle for their future. The battle raged under the harsh light of the full moon. The serpent coiled around Elias and Amara, its sharp claws slicing through the air, its breath filled with menace. Elias fought with desperate determination, his mind saturated with the thought that every movement could be his last. But at the heart of this furious struggle, a terrifying truth emerged. The moment the serpent tried to seize Amara, Elias threw himself in front of her, ready to offer his body as a shield. Darkness engulfed him, and an unbearable pain filled his soul, as if he were torn between two worlds. Amara, terrified, screamed his name. "No, Elias, don't do this!" But Elias knew. The truth burst into his mind. There was no real choice. His sacrifice was not simply that of his life, but of his very essence. He understood that even if he defied the will of the serpent god, he would not escape his destiny. The light around them intensified, the serpent's shadow retreating with a shrill scream. When the light dissipated, the serpent god was no longer there. Only Elias and Amara remained, frozen in a new reality, one without the other, but forever bound by sacrifice and destiny. A cold mist filled the area, and Elias felt an icy chill run down his skin. He slowly turned his head, trying to understand the source of the sudden breath. Then, in the gloom, a translucent figure appeared, floating above the ground. Its features were familiar, and a soft glow surrounded it, but something wasn't quite real. "Amara?" Elias whispered, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The figure slowly approached, a soft, melancholic expression on its face. Amara, or what remained of her, stood there, ethereal, like a dream fading with every movement. Her eyes, still filled with love, fixed on him with a new intensity. "Elias, I'm here, but I'm not who I used to be." Amara's voice, though soft and clear, carried an infinite sadness within it. Elias moved closer, reaching out his hand, but she shrank from his touch, moving slightly away. "It can't be," he said, heartbroken. "You're dead." Amara smiled sadly. "I'm trapped, Elias, between two worlds. My soul has not found rest, and neither will you until we are reunited." The wind blew through the trees, carrying with it whispers only Elias could understand. The beginning of a new trial. Another sacrifice. Amara floated a little closer to Elias, her face pale and devoid of warmth. She looked at her translucent hands as if they no longer belonged to a living being. A soft mist enveloped her, and her gaze was lost for a moment in the memories of a past life. "I didn't want to leave you, Elias," she said, her voice soft but filled with pain. "But sacrifice comes at a price, and the pact left me no other choice." Elias, his eyes brimming with tears, approached slowly. He could almost feel her presence, but every time he reached out, she moved away, elusive. Amara, why? Why did you have to leave? I lost you, and now I don't even know how to touch you, to feel you close to me. Amara let a tear escape, a flicker of sadness flashing in her eyes. Because love, Elias, is sometimes stronger than death, but it cannot always overcome the bonds we have sealed with the afterlife. I'm stuck here in this limbo between life and death. She closed her eyes, a veil of pain on her face. And you're trapped forever by the memory of our love, unable to move on like me. We are condemned, Elias, to live in this eternal suffering. The silence fell between them, heavy and oppressive, as Amara's words transformed into an unbearable truth. Elias, his throat tight, felt a deep despair invade him. The love he felt for her no longer seemed like a blessing, but a curse, a tangle of pain and regret. So there's no chance for us? Elias asked, his voice breaking. Nothing will be able to break this bond that keeps us here? Amara shook her head gently, infinite sadness in her eyes. No, Elias. Fate has bound us irreversibly. But there might be one last chance. Her words, though full of hope, seemed fleeting, like a dying glow in the darkness. She approached him slowly, a strange kind of energy coursing through her body. There is a ritual, one final sacrifice. If you are willing to risk everything, we may be able to break this cycle, but it won't come without a price. Elias, despite the uncertainty bubbling within him, felt torn between love and fear. How could he sacrifice anything more? And yet, deep down, a part of him knew there was no turning back. I will do anything, he said, his eyes filled with determination. Whatever the cost,